Hi, everyone. I'm Dave, and you are listening to my podcast, The Reaction Shot. Listen as each episode will showcase a movie that I love being introduced to a friend of mine that has never seen it. We will discuss, dissect, and review each film from pre to post-production, as well as its legacy. Will we see eye to eye, or is our scope of viewing a little different? Thanks for hitting play, because now you're about to find out. Fade in. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Reaction Shot. This is episode 5, and today we're going to be focusing on Stanley Kubrick's The Shining from 1980. It's a psychological horror film that opened up in the movie theaters, not very well received. The novelist, Stephen King, actually dismissed this film upon its initial release, and even to this day still talks about how this is the worst adaptation of one of his novels.
Wow.
Yeah, Stephen King's novel The Shining is extremely popular, and this movie is vastly different from Stephen King's vision, which is why Stephen King kind of dismisses it. So writer and director Stanley Kubrick was a huge fan of really taking his time to study characters and pushing actors to their limits. So he wanted to make a horror film. So he decided that he would read a whole bunch of novels and he would decide which horror novel would be the movie that he decides to make. So after reading numerous horror novels, his agent finally told him to give up. She's like, you're not going to find a novel that you want to make. So I think that you should just, move on, try something new. And she finally got him the Shining novel. And he read it and thought it was absolutely brilliant and thought he could make a great horror film out of it. He's known for being a very intelligent, well-read man. So he always liked to study each and every character and kind of give a broader aspect to what makes them tick. And he is always a very extreme attention to detail. So he thinks that Stephen King's writing in the novel did the same exact thing. So they kind of had the same vision. However, when he adapted the film, he kind of took the story into different directions, had different ideas that Stephen King, as I mentioned, wasn't a huge fan of. So with Stephen King being not the biggest fan of this film, it kind of opened to really bad reviews. Audience members weren't really big fans of it. Critics actually really tore it up. But as we know, over time, it kind of took on its own lifestyle and has become what many consider one of the greatest horror films of all time. It's constantly brought up in pop culture. It's referenced numerous times throughout. There's a lot of scenes that even if you haven't seen the film, you will know about. So definitely really made its place in pop culture. Stanley Kubrick obviously did something right. But Stephen King, even to this day, still says it's his least favorite.
That's very interesting. I kind of want to read the book now.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not a huge reader. I wish I was, because I do think that this novel would be very interesting to read, especially knowing a lot of the differences between the movie and the book. They do kind of sound, as I mentioned, completely different. So it'd be kind of cool to see a completely different take, especially from the person who actually created the characters and the ideas surrounding everything. So,
well, I'll read it and I'll give you the Cliff's Notes version.
Excellent. See, we work so well together. I love this.
We work so well together.
So the movie starred Jack Nicholson as Jack Torrance, Shelley Duvall as Wendy Torrance, Danny Lloyd as Danny Torrance, Scatman Crothers as Dick Halloran, Barry Nelson as Stuart Ullman, Philip Stone as Delbert Grady, and Joe Turkel as Lloyd the bartender. Stephen King's novel came out in 1977, and this movie was released in 1980, so there wasn't a huge gap in between the release of the book and the movie. So my background with this film, I don't remember the first time I actually watched it. I will say that I was obviously young. I used to go to the video store and I would look at different horror movies and I'd be like, oh, this one looks cool. I'm going to go home and watch it. So I would assume that I was probably somewhere between 8 and 12 years old. I feel like that was like the prime time of me watching all these classic
I
horror
can't
films.
even imagine being 8 years old and watching this movie, Dave. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, again, as I've mentioned in other ones, I did see a lot of these movies at a younger age, so for me to fully understand the depth of them, pretty much non-existent, but I enjoyed them nonetheless, and nothing really scared me too much. So, you know, when the infamous scene when Jack is breaking down the door with an axe, and he says,
Uh-huh.
"Here's Johnny," I was like, that's cool. I wasn't. Yeah, I should probably talk to somebody. But yeah, so this is, in my personal opinion, this is a great cast. Jack Nicholson is actually, I don't know if you know this about me, one of my favorite actors. I remember the first time I watched this movie, I remember thinking, man, if I could be famous and I could be an actor and do any film, this is the role that I would play. It just seemed I feel like he really got lost in the character.
Mhm.
I feel like he still had this Jack Nicholson side to him, but I do feel as the movie goes on, he himself also seems that he just gets crazier and crazier, and I just
Yeah.
love that. So the
Yeah.
movie was filmed in chronological order. So
Nice.
yeah, so over time, the how everyone kind of starts to slowly look run down,
Mm-hmm.
actually evolves, honestly, because they were getting run down.
Yeah.
The film is notoriously known for being one of the longest shoots for a horror film. It took almost an entire year to film The
Wow.
Shining. Yeah,
Holy shit.
yeah. Could you imagine just spending an entire year, you know, uh, being in this type of psychological,
No, it would start to
running you
affect
down?
you as a human,
Yeah, yeah. It's
I
crazy.
feel. Yeah.
I don't know. That's such a long shoot, and seeing the stuff that happens in the film, just knowing that you have to go through that multiple times, over and over again, is insane to me.
Yeah.
There's actually a Guinness Book World Record for the scene where Jack is following Wendy up the stairs and
Uh-huh.
she's swinging the bat at him, and
Uh-huh.
she's crying hysterically, "Don't hurt me, don't hurt me." It's actually in the Guinness World Book of Records. That scene was shot 127 times.
Are you serious?
So the Steadicam camera operator and the editor of the film say that that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
However, a lot of people involved in the film say that is true. Um, there have been multiple reports, even from different scenes, how many times Stanley Kubrick would make people redo their scenes.
Wow,
And
that's insane.
yeah, so it would just be over and over again of the same stuff back and forth, the emotional stress, etc. So yeah, I
That's
couldn't imagine it.
crazy. No.
Uh, yeah,
You know
Shelley,
what's
Shelley.
funny? I read like a fact, like I was like, it said that she swung the bat 127 times. It's
Uh,
like I was like, now you say
yep.
that, and I'm like, I got it all wrong. I probably read it wrong.
No, you're fine. I think the bat swinging was like 40 sometimes or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely read it
Um,
wrong then.
No, I mean but I think that the controversy around the whole scene, just
Mhm.
because it was so emotionally draining. I mean, Shelley Duvall to this day talks about how the movie emotionally ran her down. She had physical illness from there. She started losing her hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that,
Can't
but
even imagine shooting this movie.
yeah. So this was your first time ever seeing The Shining, correct?
First time, yes. And I decided I couldn't do it alone.
Okay. So you watched it with someone?
Yeah, I watched it with my mom and my dad.
Excellent.
And then
Hey,
my
they're there to protect you.
aunt had texted me saying she would watch it with me. So we all went to my parents' house, had some snackies, and watched
I
this
love it.
together with hands. Well, me, my mom, and my aunt with hands over our faces, basically.
Excellent. The best way to watch a horror film with the fam.
Yeah, with the family. Yeah. My
um,
dad had seen it before, and I'll I'll talk about a little bit later. He definitely ruined some parts for us.
Oh no, come on, Dad.
Come on,
Uh,
Dad.
Come on, Dad. So yeah, I'm glad that you got to view the film with your family.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It definitely was interesting watching it with them because I don't know. My mom and my aunt both really don't love horror at all. Like they're like me. I'm just like called you on my
you
phone by
did just call
accident.
me. I think you just really wanted to talk to me.
God. Yeah. But my aunt and my mom are like me. They horror is not their thing. So we were all like pretty nervous going into it, but my dad had seen it before. So
Okay,
yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Lauren, what is The Shining even about?
So it basically tells the story of Jack Torrance, who is a writer. And in order to get some writing done, he takes a job as a caretaker of the Overlook Hotel during the winter months. So it's essentially shut down during the winter months. He brings his wife, Wendy, and his son, Danny. Danny has these psychic abilities, which is noticed by the chef, DeCaloran. And as the staff and guests leave the hotel for the season, the family is left completely isolated from the outside world. Danny's like premonitions become violent and disturbing, and Jack kind of slowly descends into madness. Dun dun dun.
Yeah, that's so the one thing I will say about The Shining, you gave a breakdown of what the film's about. From the outside, just hearing what it's about, it's kind of a simple
Mm-hmm.
concept.
Yeah.
And I feel like whenever I or someone else explains The Shining to somebody, there's kind of like, okay, cool. Family goes to a hotel, gets trapped, and they lose their mind. Awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, underneath the surface, I just feel like there's so much more that's going on, which is what I think makes the movie, in my opinion, so great. You as an audience you feel that dread, you feel that sense of isolation.
Yep.
And I think that's something that Stanley Kubrick does so well. And there are a lot of things that he does in the film to make you feel that isolation with his filming techniques or his decisions on certain camera angles, etc. One thing I've always noticed, even as a young child watching it for the first time, is the way the hotel is set up on the inside just doesn't make sense at all. Did you notice that?
No. No.
No.
I was like, I want to go vacation there.
Well, that was gonna be one of my questions. If someone said, "Hey, you can go stay in the place where they filmed, The Shining," would you go stay there?
I was thinking if like there was no horrible backstory, that
Mm,
this would be like the type of place I would want to stay.
right, right.
My dad and
Yes,
my mom, interestingly enough, had lunch there. My dad
really.
made her go have lunch there when they were in Colorado. Yeah.
Wait, I'm so jealous.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So jealous.
Yeah.
Oof. I think that'd be great. No, I think we should go stay there and see if we can stay in
Room
the room two.
237.
Yeah, so actually in the book the room is 217,
Mm-hmm.
and in the movie it's 237. The reason for the change is the hotel asked Stanley Kubrick to not use 217 because they wanted people to not be afraid to stay in that room.
Okay, so there's actually no room 237 at the hotel.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's safe. However, there are a lot of hotels in the world that do have rooms 237 that people are like, no thanks.
Well, I'm never going to look at that number the same way again. That's for
No,
sure.
absolutely not. Well, me, I'd be like, let's go stay there. So if someone offered you like $50,000 to stay in a room 237, would you do it?
I would do it.
Yeah,
I
I like
think
that
so.
dedication.
Yeah.
Good.
I think
Okay.
I think I would do it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the hotel itself, the exterior of the hotel is a real hotel. It was inspired by the Stanley Hotel. I believe it's in London. Stanley Kubrick just always thought that the hotel looked creepy, so he
Mm-hmm.
found a similar one. Did the exterior shots, but they actually built the interior of the hotel on some sets in England for the filming. And one of the most notable things about how I mentioned the interior of the hotel is shaped like this doesn't make sense is in the beginning scene with the interview when
Mm-hmm.
Jack goes in for that interview. He's walking through and then he goes into the office for that interview, and there's a window up above the gentleman interviewing him. And that window wouldn't make sense based on what you see around the exterior of the room inside the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
There would be no physical way for a window to actually be there. And then when Danny's riding his little bike around the hotel,
Little tricycle.
yeah, that cute little tricycle that I think all of us
Little
probably had.
tricycle.
I would never let my kid ride that tricycle after seeing this movie, that's for sure. Um, but when he's riding around on the tricycle, the different hallway, the connections and everything just don't make sense. I guess it's hard to explain, but if you watch the film and just like really, really study that, it's just interesting because you're like, that doesn't make sense. There would be no way there'd be a hallway there.
I didn't
Like,
even think about that.
we're too nervous about something jumping out from around the
Yeah.
corner.
Yeah.
um, yeah. So yeah, like I said, The Shining's on the surface is a pretty simple film, but Stanley Kubrick just added so many layers to it. Stephen King obviously took it in so many different directions. One of the other things about the isolation feeling is the time cards, like the little title cards that are placed throughout the film to
Yeah.
tell you about the time.
Mm.
It starts with the interview and day one, and very slowly starts to go to Tuesday, and then it goes to 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Just shows you how slow time is now going. And
Mm-hmm.
when you were watching the film, did you feel that sense of dread, and did you feel like you were a part of that isolation?
I did, and like the music definitely had me there. Like they did whatever they did was like perfect for this
Yeah.
movie. Yeah.
Yeah. So they didn't have one specific composer for the film. They actually
Hmm.
had some that were already recorded musical scores that Stanley
Hmm.
put throughout the film. So it's kind of interesting to think that some of the scenes have music of things that were recorded for other films or
Yeah.
um, yeah, but it all works out so well. And I think as I've gotten older watching it, I really appreciate the score so much. It definitely adds that. I mean, the opening scene,
The opening scene, that creepy me like I was there.
you were like, oh shit.
First I was like, that's such a pretty drive, like
Yeah.
fall,
You hear,
the leaves.
yeah. And then the camera starts to like slowly
Yeah.
turn. And you
Mm-hmm.
just, yeah, so it's actually filmed from a helicopter, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they, got it up to where it wouldn't shake too much while it was up there to try to make it as steady as possible. And I think they did a really good job.
I was
That
actually like one of the things I first was like impressed by was the opening scene. I'm like, this is 1980. Like it didn't seem like it to me. It seemed like way more like advanced than it was.
For sure, yeah. It was actually a couple of years ago. It was actually remastered in 4K quality. So when I rewatched it recently, I actually noticed how great it looks. It doesn't look like it's from 1980, like you said. They did a
No,
really
not
good
at
job
all.
of
Yeah.
um, yeah. So the opening scene of the movie, or just kind of an establishing shot, kind of going through, I guess you would say, woods and lakes and following this car on a windy road in Colorado as Jack is going for his interview to stay at the Overlook Hotel. He has his little interview, and while we're watching him start his interview, we're also cut back to his wife and kid. His wife is Wendy, and his son is Danny.
Mhm.
They're having a simple conversation, your typical American family, and he starts, you know, talking about his imaginary friend that lives in his throat, named Tony.
Tony
Tony.
town.
uh, Yeah, so Danny Lloyd plays Danny. He was
Hmm.
5 years old when this movie was being made.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Stanley actually would tell him that he was making a family film. So he would have him not pay attention to the scary stuff, or if something, frightening was happening, he would make it as much childlike as possible for Danny, so he wouldn't
Hmm.
feel like, he had to be scared or anything like that. So, how he exactly did all of that with some of the scenes, I'm not 100% sure,
Yeah.
but over time, the actor Danny that plays Danny mentioned that he really honestly doesn't remember most of the filming, but does remember Stanley being very nice, and he did not know it was a horror film until he was much older. So,
Wow.
yeah, so kudos to Stanley for doing that. I guess that was one of the good sides to him during the filming of this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. This
Um,
Little Danny was such a good actor too. I
he
thought.
was. So Danny actually read for the part, and when he brings up Tony, whatever scene that he did for his audition, whenever he starts talking as Tony, he actually came up with the idea to use the finger.
Yeah.
And Stanley Kubrick thought that was amazing. So, um, of course, they ran with that, and that's what we see in the film. So,
So many references that I now get.
uh, well, the thing about Tony also, Tony's actually explained in Stephen King's novel, where he is not explained in the film. I do like the ambiguous, not fully understanding the whole Tony idea, but I
Hmm.
also do like Stephen King's idea behind it, and it was Tony was actually Danny's future self.
Oh,
So Tony knew what was about to happen and urged it not to happen. But obviously,
I
Danny being a
I
child,
like that better.
yeah. So that adds a different layer to it.
Yeah. Well, that
So if
makes total sense.
you decide, did you watch this movie again or just one time with your family?
I skimmed through it the second time.
Okay, I was wondering about that too. I'm like, wonder if Lauren watched it for the second time, like late at night
Yeah,
with all the lights
usually
off.
no. Usually I watch it twice and I skimmed the second time. Yes.
That's okay. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, so the introduction to Tony, we kind of realized is going to be a plot point in the film. Wendy's is totally, she understands, like, this is Danny's imaginary friend. She even speaks to Tony as well. So we're
Hmm.
just kind of like, all right, cool. Nothing wrong with that. Just your
Good
normal
old
everyday kid
tone.
with, yeah, good old
Yeah.
tone. He's hanging out. So Jackson, in his interview, kind of a longer scene. During the
Yeah.
interview, Stuart Ullman, the head of the general manager of this hotel, lets him know about incident that happened at the hotel years ago. And do you remember what that incident is, Lauren?
Yes, I do. Charles Grady, I guess, was the winter caretaker at that point. He went insane, killed his family with an axe, and then killed himself. So basically, it's well, the way he described it, I was like, he stacked the bodies up neatly. I
No,
was
he
like,
says it with
okay,
such just like, hey, just by the by, there
he,
was, a
yes,
murder here.
yeah,
No big
with
deal.
an axe,
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, he stacked them up in the corner. He was very
stacked them up
neat
real
about it.
nice and
So
nice.
yeah, and yeah, he just says it so nonchalantly, and Jack's just like,
Uh-huh.
okay, cool. Like, do I
Yeah.
get the job? So I wonder if this is something that Ullman tells, all the applicants that are coming to, stay at the hotel for the winter time. It's kind of like a test, like, hey, you should probably know about this and see how they react to it, because Jack definitely just like, yeah, whatever, I'm cool with it.
A little too cool with it.
A little too cool. So we cut back to Wendy and Danny at the house, and Jack gives Wendy a call, and we now get the confirmation that he got the job, and he and his family will be spending the winter at the Overlook Hotel. While Wendy's having this conversation with Jack, we have Danny in the bathroom, and he's talking to his good old pal Tony. Tony kind of cuts in and says, I gotta tell you something. Danny's all ears, and we see Danny standing in front of the mirror in the bathroom, and he's asking Tony, like, why don't you want to go to the hotel? And Tony goes, I don't know. Really creepy. The way the kid does the voice of Tony, especially later in the film,
Oh God,
phenomenal.
later it's creepy as hell.
Yeah, it's like cute and like whatever at first, and then you're just like, wait, no, no.
No,
So
no, there's always a creepy kid.
always a creepy kid.
Always a creepy
So
kid.
after having this conversation, Danny and Tony, we start to see a vision that we understand Danny's seeing as well, which are these bright
Hmm.
red elevator doors that are slowly opening up, and blood is just pouring out of this.
Hmm.
I'm talking buckets and gallons of blood, while also intertwining with shots of two twin girls in blue dresses,
Were
and
they
also
twins though?
in real life,
No,
and
but like, cause like, what's the interviewer guy's name? He said he had two girls, 8 and 10, or something.
yeah, no, you're correct. Yes.
Oh, okay,
So they are
okay.
always they are always referred to as twin girls when
Hmm.
like people talk about the movie, but yeah, they are not twins. But
They just
Stanley,
dress alike.
yeah,
And
Stanley Kubrick just made them look exactly identical, and I think that's
uh-huh.
kind of why they're referred to as the twins. But yeah, so he starts to see visions of those two girls, and he also sees a vision of he himself screaming. So
Uh-huh.
these are great visions to have. Next thing we find out is Danny passed out. Danny
Yep.
passed out from the visions he saw, and Wendy has a nurse come over to the house and check him out, and she says he's totally fine. And Wendy's just like, well, they talk about Tony for a minute, and she says it's normal for kids to have an imaginary friend, and
Yeah. And they talk about the accident.
mhm. So the next part of the conversation they have is they talk about how Wendy alludes to the fact that Jack has stopped drinking. He's been 5 months sober, but the reason he decided to make the choice to become sober is because Danny messed up a bunch of his papers one night because Jack is a writer, and he was fumbling around with his papers, and Jack got mad and went to go grab him and pull him up to tell him to stop doing it, and actually, I assuming dislocated his Danny's arm.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, But Wendy's like, oh, well, it's all fine now. He doesn't drink anymore, so there'll be no more issues and it's all good. So, um,
No
yeah,
more
so
issues.
he's no more issues. We're in the clear. We're in the clear. Um, the nurse kind of says, let's keep him in bed for a little bit. And as they're talking, Wendy's smoking a cute little cigarette that,
The scene.
so the cigarette in the
Ash the
scene.
cigarette, Wendy.
Yes. So the cigarette in the scene is, as she's speaking, she's just letting the cigarette burn, and the ash just keeps
Mm-hmm.
getting longer and longer to the point where you're just like you said, you're like, okay, let's take care of this now, please.
Most
Um,
frustrating scene of the entire movie.
yes, yes, that's when we all went a little mad for sure. Um,
Uh-huh.
but this scene is so popular in pop culture that you can actually buy the cigarette with the long ash on it. Like
Okay.
you could literally order it on Amazon.
Oh my
Like
God.
it literally is called Wendy Torrance's cigarette.
Oh God. That's crazy.
Yeah. So next thing we cut to is the family is headed up to the Overlook Hotel. They're heading there for the winter and they're ready for a good time. Jack's gonna focus on his writing. Wendy's
Mm-hmm.
gonna, be walking around, and I don't even know what Wendy was planning on doing.
I don't know what
Um
Wendy was planning on doing.
uh Yeah, just like thinking about it, I'm like, oh, that would be. I mean, you have
Well, I
no.
think
I
like
mean,
later on she like is doing his job as the caretaker.
yes, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I feel like she could be doing certain things, around the hotel on Danny's feet playing all the time, and I don't know. I feel like that really would be so isolating, just being in
It
that
would
huge
be.
hotel. Man, I think anyone would go a little mad. Um,
Yeah.
so while the family arrives at the hotel, it's actually the last day of the hotel being in business. Everyone's heading out. The people that work there, the guests that had been staying there, and Jack is waiting to meet up with Ullman to get a tour of where he'll be staying exactly with his family. While he's sitting on the chair waiting for Ullman to come over, if you look closely, he's looking at a Playgirl magazine while
Oh,
he's
is
sitting
he?
there.
I didn't notice that. No.
Yeah, not a Playboy, but a Playgirl. So I feel like Stanley
Oh.
Kubrick put that in there as something silly, but also who's gonna have a porno magazine just lying around a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
um, but as we talked about, Stanley Kubrick is very keen on details, so he did that for
Uh-huh.
a reason, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Uh, so as Ullman is giving a tour of the hotel to the family, we just kind of see more of the interior shots of the hotel. He talks a little bit about people that have stayed there. He also references the hotel being built on an Indian burial ground. So that's something that we've learned through horror novels and horror films over time. The Indian burial ground is definitely a cesspool for ghosts to come
Mm-hmm.
out and play. So,
Yep.
once he mentions that, so Indian burial ground was mentioned multiple times in different movies and novels prior to this, but this is one of the earlier films that something like this is talked about. So this is
Uh-huh.
the beginning of that idea. But as they're getting a tour of the hotel, Danny's kind of off doing his own things, playing with darts, and
Mm-hmm.
he starts to feel a presence behind him, and he sees our two girls in their blue dresses holding hands and staring at him. And at first we're like, okay, these are the girls that he had in his vision. There's
Uh-huh.
also lots of blood, but these girls look innocent, right? I mean, they just
Totally.
want to hang they just want to hang out.
Just want to hang out with Danny.
Yeah, so we're like, okay, there's those two girls he had visions of, but we know a bunch of people are leaving. Maybe these girls are, kids from someone who had been staying there. But Danny just seems a little unnerved knowing what he saw in his vision. So I think we as the audience feel the same. And
Mm-hmm.
then here we're introduced to kind of an apartment of sorts inside the hotel, which is where they'll be staying.
Mm-hmm.
It has a heater in there. It has a television, refrigerator, everything you'd want in your own apartment. So Jack's just like, well, it's very cozy for a family.
God,
Uh,
his acting in this movie is like nothing I've ever seen before. It's
so
crazy.
okay,
It's
with you
so
saying that,
good.
okay, cool. So actually, Jack Nicholson's performance in this film is heavily debated. A lot of people
Really?
think that he is way too over the top, and other people think that he's just brilliant, which I am one of the ones who thinks he's just brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, So Stephen King wrote Jack to be a very nice, wholesome family man
Mm-hmm.
from the beginning, and very slowly turn into what we see in the film. Whereas
Yeah.
a lot of people think that Jack from the beginning already seems like he's at a breaking point,
He's a little unhinged.
and I get both ideas, but just the way that Jack Nicholson plays Jack is, I definitely think, incredible. Like the way
Oh,
he
I
says certain
agree.
lines. Yeah. Going back to Stanley Kubrick doing multiple takes for different things, he would often tell Jack to, all right, let's do it again and do it more fearful, or do it scarier, or do it more reserved. So he would do multiple takes, and then Stanley would decide what makes the most sense for
Mm-hmm.
that scene,
Yeah.
which I think is a pretty cool technique. If you leave it at that. But once you start hearing about all the other techniques he used for filming, then it kind of gets a little frustrating.
Oh God, I don't want to know.
Yeah. Yeah. And now we're outside of the hotel and we see this huge hedge maze, which I think is pretty cool. I would love to do. It's basically all these hedges that make this ginormous maze. They say it'll take an hour or two to fully make it through, so make sure you have some time to get in there and find your way out. In the novel, it's actually hedges made of animals.
What?
Um, yeah, so like in shapes of animals and such.
God. I
So
don't
at
I
the
don't
end
know
of,
where my mind.
oh yeah, what did you think?
I don't know.
You saw just a
So the
bunch of animals standing
hedges.
around
No.
like
Okay,
dinosaurs.
so the hedges were in the shapes of animals.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, that
Yep.
makes sense. Oh
Um,
God.
so in the novel, at the end of the film, the animals, the actual hedges that are shaped as animals come to life.
Okay.
So Stanley was like, can't really bring that about in this film, so he came up with the idea of the maze, which I think works really well.
Yeah.
We've all done a maze at some point in our life, so um And here we're
Sure.
back inside, and sure. Have you never done the maze before?
I don't know. Probably one of those, like mazes at the, you know, what is it called? Like Simmons or something? Yeah.
Yeah. Man,
Yeah.
I am amazed that you have not done a maze
I
before.
think the lack of control is, yeah, getting lost is
So,
not my idea of a good time.
so I think for Halloween this year we should do a haunted house with a maze.
Okay. With you, I will, Dave.
Oh, look at you. Just getting so brave now. I love it. These movies are changing you.
They're changing me.
All right, so we're back inside and we stumble upon the Gold Room, which is this big, lavish ballroom. It has a bar, and here we meet Dick Halloran. Uh,
Yes.
he he's there to continue the tour. He takes Danny and Wendy off to see the kitchen and the pantry and all those things. And man, they are stacked up with food. I'll tell you, there's so
Yeah.
much food there.
They're good
There's
for a
definitely
while.
they're good for a while for sure. I mean, they have a walk-in cooler full of tons of meat, like an astronomical amount of meat. And they also
Mm-hmm.
have a walk-in pantry with so many canned goods and things. Um, yeah, they definitely wouldn't run out of anything. They could have so many crazy meals. That's what Wendy would be doing. Wendy would just, I mean, I personally would just be someone who would just be in the kitchen, just be like, well, I'm bored today, so I'm going to come up with some really cool recipe in here. That's what I would do. I'll
Yeah.
let Jack walk around and write his novel at the same time.
I'd be in the
Danny write his
library
drizzle.
reading.
Yes, maybe I should. That's what I should have done. That I
Yeah.
would end up liking my books.
Yes.
And lucky for Jack, they mentioned that all the alcohol is taken off the premise for the winter. There's no point
Mm-hmm.
of having it there, so they take it off site. So Jack doesn't have to worry about falling back into some bad habits. As we continue our little tour, basically Dick decides to ask Danny if he would like some ice cream. This is going to get the two of them together, just the two of them. And while they're in the pantry room and he's showing him around, Dick actually asks Danny about the ice cream through his mind. So Danny can
Mm-hmm.
hear what he says. At this point, we're just kind of like, what? What did you think
Yeah.
at this moment?
I loved it. Where they were heading with this.
Sure.
It was first of all, I love the character of Dick Halloran
Mm-hmm.
already, just right off the bat.
Yeah.
And
Very wholesome.
very, yeah. And it's cool that they have that connection.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think Scatman Crothers is actually a really good actor. I'm not familiar with him with anything else except for this film. But
Well, my aunt, when she had heard he was in it, and she's like, I love him. She was so excited he was in this movie
awesome.
when we watched
Nice.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, what a guy. Unfortunately, he has since passed. I actually think that he passed away not too long after this movie came out.
Really? He seems
Yeah,
so
I think
young.
I want to say he passed away maybe in the late 80s. So maybe 7 to 10 years after this happened. So
Yeah.
actually a lot of this cast unfortunately has passed on. And Danny did one more movie after The Shining, and that was it.
Yeah.
And Shelley Duvall has done some things, including the Popeye movie that came out the same year. She played Olive Oil.
Oh, I can see that. She's like the perfect olive oil.
Absolutely. But other than that, she hasn't really done too much outside of that. And she always talks about how this film kind of ruined her love for Hollywood. So
Oh.
yeah,
Yikes.
poor Shelley.
Yeah.
So Dick decides to take Danny to go get some ice cream while Wendy continues on. And as they're having ice cream, they have a very important conversation in the context of the film. Do you remember what that conversation is, Lauren?
Yeah. He reveals that him and his mother could hold conversations with their minds, and it was called Shining, and that Danny has it as well, which I was like, okay, The Shining. I
And there
get
we
it.
go. Did you know that that's what The Shining meant?
No
No.
idea.
Yeah, I feel like the first time I watched it, I was like, what does The Shining mean? And then, in the scene, you just you're like, oh, yeah, The Shining.
I
Yeah,
want
that makes sense.
I want Shining. I want
That
it.
would be fun. It would.
Why can't I have it?
Maybe if you hope real hard.
Oh,
So this is where Danny talks about Tony as well, and
Mm-hmm.
he says that Tony shows him things, and Dick mentions that you can say that the hotel um, kind of shines as well,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is very interesting
Yep.
thing to speak about. And he basically says you're going to see. Danny asked him, "Is there something bad here?" Based on the visions he himself saw prior to getting there. Dick kind of pauses for a moment and he says, "Well, he actually calls him Doc, which is something that Wendy and Jack call Danny, and Wendy even mentions it at the beginning of the tour because Dick calls him Doc, and she's like, "How'd you
Mm-hmm.
know his name was Doc?" So that
Because
was
of
one little
Shining.
because of Shining. So he talks about how certain people or things leave a trace of themselves behind. Kind of like an example would be if someone burns toast, the scent of that burnt toast kind of lingers, and he's saying
Mm-hmm.
that there's presence here of things that linger that other people can't notice, but because of their ability that because they can shine, they can actually see these things that are lingering behind, um, or they can see things that haven't happened yet. So this really opens up the whole dialogue of exactly what The Shining is for sure. And
Mm-hmm.
he kind of says, don't be scared of the things you see. They're kind of like a storybook. They can't hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that helps Danny kind of be like, all right, well, I'm going to see these things, but I shouldn't be scared of anything. Until Danny mentions room 237.
Mm-hmm.
And he says something along the lines of, well, "Why are you so scared of room 237?" And the look on Dick's face in this moment, he says, "I'm not scared of room 237." Danny says, "Well, Mr. Halloran, what's in room 237?" And he says, "Nothing. Don't even go near that room.
Mm-hmm.
Don't look at it. Don't try to go in there. You have no business going in there." So, of course, you tell anyone, including a child, not to go do something. They're going to get a little
They do
curious.
it. Yeah. Not me though.
I was just gonna say, would you have done that?
No. Be like, okay, there's a good reason. I'm
Okay,
not going to go in there.
I'm gonna stay away from room 237. Okay, heard.
You
Me,
definitely would have gone to room 237.
man, once Dick
You'd
walked
be
away, I'd be
running
running up
there.
the. Yeah, I'd be taking that blood-filled elevator. Like, well, I'm gonna check it out.
Well,
Wendy just made some breakfast. We assume it's the next day. Wendy made some breakfast.
it's
Um,
actually,
Danny's
Dave, a month later.
we on a month later. Perfect.
Yeah.
You're correct. Well,
Mm-hmm.
thank you. You are
Mm-hmm.
right on track here.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so the title card is 1 month later.
Mm-hmm.
So we had the interview, we had their arrival, and now we're 1 month later. Wendy made some breakfast. She's obviously found some love in the kitchen here, whipping some good stuff up. Danny's on his tricycle riding around, and um, I actually have this scene on in the background, and I'm watching the interior of the hotel, and it just doesn't make sense. It kind of drives me crazy.
The carpets
I
drove
love it.
me crazy. That's what drove me crazy.
Yes, so the carpet is actually very infamous as well.
Mm-hmm.
That design is on book bags, on posters. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
You look up The Shining, you're definitely going to see that carpet in
Yep.
so many places. One of the cool things about the sound design as well, when Danny's riding his little tricycle around, um, you hear the sound of the carpet and then the hard floor and then the carpet and then the
Mm-hmm.
hard floor, and just how loud it is, and then stops and loud.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a soundtrack itself,
Yeah.
and you feel like you're there with it. I love that so much. I think um, that was a great choice to film it that way, and the sound design, like I said, was just incredible. Wendy wakes Jack up and says it's 11:30. And he's like,
It's
ah,
such a good impression. That
listen,
was so good.
the way these characters talk in this film, I'll probably randomly do things throughout, and you guys can make
Yeah,
fun of me
please
because some of
do.
them might be really bad. Jack's, it's 11:30, sleeping in, and she's like, "Here's your breakfast." She said, "Yeah, you want to go take me for a nice walk?" And he's like, "I suppose I should go start writing."
Mm-hmm.
She asked him about ideas. I mean, like you mentioned, we're a month in now, and he's like, "Well, I guess I should start writing." That's one of the main reasons why I'm really excited about being here.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to get back into the habit of writing every day. She asks him if he has any ideas, and he's like, "No, not yet." But I think this scene just kind of establishes what their day in and day out life is in this hotel. Not too much exciting stuff happening. Then
Mm-hmm.
we cut to a awesome little typewriter. Typewriters are not very popular anymore, but
I
he
wish they
has,
were.
yeah, Taylor Swift's trying to make it happen again. all the
Oh,
typewriter
Dave,
stuff for
why did
her
you
new era.
go
Gotta throw a little
there?
pop culture stuff in here, you know.
No. Oh
This
my
is
God.
the tortured poets department right here
No, 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 no,
with
no,
Jack
no, 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 no,
Torrance.
no, no. Nope. Nope.
uh, so he's in front of his Taylor Swift typewriter. No, I'm just kidding. He's in front of his typewriter,
No.
and we
No.
see the typewriter. There's nothing written on the page. And as we slowly pan out, Jack's not even sitting in front of the typewriter. He's actually throwing a ball up against the wall.
Mm-hmm.
That's his form of working at this moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
In this huge room, kind of like I guess like the main area of the hotel when you walk in. So it's this huge lobby and some staircases leading up, and you can go all sorts of different directions. While this is happening, Wendy and Danny are like, let's go play in the maze. So
Yes.
they're running through the maze, and I think this is an interesting scene from
Yeah,
both
for
angles with
sure.
them and with Jack. So they're off doing their own thing, mom and son having a good time. And they're away from Jack at this moment, and we see their relationship. And Jack stops throwing the ball. He's kind of wandering around a little bit and walks over, and there's actually a toy model, I guess you would say, of the maze, of the shrub
Yeah, a
maze
little
outside.
replica.
Yeah, so he's just kind of like looking at it, admiring it, and we as an audience, as he's looking down, we get a huge establishing shot of the maze, and what we would assume is Jack looking at the replica of it. We see Wendy and Danny walking through it as well, which I think is pretty cool, and the scene's almost shot as if he's God or constantly watching over them, that he's always present even when they're
Yep.
not there. Is
I
that what
found
you
this
kind of got from
scene
that?
very creepy. Yeah, it was
Yes.
creepy to me. Yeah.
hmm Yeah. So I think Stanley's idea of that was incredible, and I'm glad that you also kind of felt that as well. So I do think that was definitely his intention there. And of course, Jack Nicholson doing his Jack Nicholson stare makes
Oh
it even creepier.
my God.
Um, so Danny's riding his tricycle around, and um, as he's riding around, he's checking out different places. He's on different floors, and he starts to slow down, and he sees the infamous room 237.
237.
He
Yep.
stops, he checks it out, stares at it, and he wonders, should I go in there? Should I not? He gets off his
Should not.
tricycle. He gets off that tricycle. He looks around. He's wondering, is someone even going to see that I'm here? At this point, he's doing a very childlike thing. Just he's curious. He puts his
Mm-hmm.
hand on the doorknob, and then he has a quick flash of the two girls in the blue dresses, and then realizes the door's locked.
Which is
So,
good. Yes.
and I
Leave
feel
that
like
door
Dick probably did
locked.
that. Yeah, Dick was like, I gotta close this door, I'm gonna lock it up. No one's gonna
Mm-hmm.
get in here. I'm gonna keep whatever's in there at bay. So Danny's like, well, guess I gotta go. Gets on his tricycle and pieces out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Now we see Jack. He's actually typing away at his typewriter, working hard. And
Mm-hmm.
you want to talk a little bit about this scene?
Oh God, this scene. So Wendy comes in and asks how it's going. And he's
Fine.
like, I could make some sandwiches.
He's so annoyed. Like
He's
he hates
so
her. He
annoyed.
hates his life. I
And
love when she said her forecast says it's gonna snow tonight,
her
and he
performance
doesn't.
in this entire movie is so like 50s. Do you know
Oh
what I mean? Do
yeah.
you get what I'm saying? Like,
That
yeah,
that 50s housewife, like, yes,
yeah,
yes,
yes.
hon, no matter what, hon. And then
Sure, hun.
Jack says, what do you want me to do about it? Like, I don't care. Why are you telling me this is useless
Yeah,
information? I'm working.
yeah. And he basically tells her he loses it. He said, no more interrupting. Yeah. So he's pissed. This is the first time we really see him like lose it a little bit.
Yeah, this is definitely the first scene where you kind of see him crack. You mentioned about the sandwiches, and he's just
Yeah.
like, whenever you come in and interrupt me, you're just breaking my concentration. You're distracting me. And it'll take time to get back to where I was. Do you understand? And she's just like, yeah, yeah, sure. He's like, if you hear me typing,
You're
whatever the
so
fuck you hear me
good.
doing in here, it means I'm working.
Yeah.
that means don't come in. Like, leave me alone. So she's just kind of like, okay, well, maybe at another time I'll come in and then maybe you can show me what you're writing. And he's just like, no.
No.
So then he continues. And, now it's Thursday. So
Hmm.
uh, talking about the title cards again, there's all this, big gaps, and now our gaps are kind of closing in a little bit. So we're back to Thursday. Snow has arrived at the Overlook Hotel, and Jack is watching Danny and Wendy outside playing in the snow, and he is just staring.
Oh, the creepiest stare. My dad
He
actually
has like a.
laughed at this part.
What did he think about it? I mean, what did he laugh about?
Just like
Just the
I
face,
think,
just Jack
yeah,
Nicholson.
just Jack Nicholson. Yeah.
Yeah, his stare, like when you're watching it, he's also literally not moving at all. Like it's not a
Yeah.
freeze frame, it's nothing. He's so much like a statue. If you like really look hard, he literally is not. You don't even know if he's breathing. Like that's
Uh-huh.
how stiff he is, and he has like this weird, almost menacing grin on his face,
Yep.
and like a phenomenal. Just the look in general is great acting. Like
Oh,
so, it's kind of like
crazy.
okay, Stanley Cooper gets a real tight shot of this, and it kind of hovers for a little bit, and then we get a new title card and it says Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Jack's typing away, and Wendy's off playing with the phone lines
Yep.
and trying to find someone to talk to. I think this is a cool thing because she's like, well, Jack doesn't want me to bother him. Danny can't
Yeah.
really carry a conversation at the age of 5, and I don't know what to do. So she just kind of wanders around the hotel, smoking her cigarettes and trying to figure out how to flick those ashes off. She finally gets to the radio and she gets to talk to the police station, and they're having a conversation. And she kind of talks about how the telephones aren't working,
Uh-huh.
and I asked them a few questions, and then we kind of realized now she's trying to carry on a conversation because she
Yeah. I felt
doesn't
sad
have
for
anyone to talk
her.
to.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
felt sad for
you're
poor old
like you're
Wendy.
like you're like, come on, Mr. Policeman, keep talking to her. I guess it's the
Yeah.
Forest Rangers.
Can I make you some
Um,
sandwiches?
yeah,
Will you appreciate
I'll,
my sandwich?
I'm down to you. And here we are back to Danny riding his tricycle around, and he turns into a hallway. This is a whole new carpet, a whole different area of the hotel we have not yet seen. And as he turns the corner, he sees those two girls, and they say, "Come play with us, Danny." Um,
Danny, forever
yeah,
and ever and ever.
yeah, yes, creepy. Danny's just like staring at them, like, "Are you real or are you not?" And as he's staring at them, the screen flashes, and we see the two girls, blood everywhere. So they're in the same
Mm-hmm.
exact hallway, the same girls. Now they're on the floor, blood's everywhere. You see an axe lying there. The real quick shot, it scares the shit out of Danny.
Mm-hmm.
And then it cuts back again to the girls. And as you said, they kept saying, and ever, and ever. And
And
as it cuts in between,
ever
it
and
keeps
ever.
jumping back and forth. Yeah. And then Danny throws his hands on his face, how I envision you watching this movie. Kind of peeks, through
Yeah.
his fingers. Um, and now they're gone. And
Mm-hmm.
Tony says, "Don't be scared. It's just like pictures in a book, Danny."
Mm-hmm.
Exactly what Dick mentioned to him. So he kind of tells himself, or Tony tells him, it's not real. So now we're
Yeah.
back. Now we're on Monday. So days are really slowing down here. Get to see some TV life. Wendy's watching some TV with
Mm-hmm.
Danny. This is kind of how we see their day in and day out now. Danny decides to go check to see what Dad's doing. He goes up to their like a little apartment room, and um, Jack's just sitting on the edge of the bed, just staring into oblivion again, which is
God,
something
yep.
he's been these last couple of days seems to be always doing. Danny comes in. He's like, "Sorry to bother you," and Jack said, "Nah, come here, let's talk, And what did you think about this scene? Do you feel like he was being genuine, or
I don't
feel like there
know.
was
I couldn't
creepy?
tell. It was definitely like creepy because then, he's like, I'll never do anything to hurt you. And I don't know. It felt like he was possessed or something because then he said this, like, I wish we could stay here forever and ever. Like, he repeated what the girls just said to
Hmm.
Danny. So I was like, he's like possessed or something. Like, this isn't, yeah.
Yeah, no, good observation. Yeah, he's almost in like a catatonic trance, just kind of
Hmm.
staring off and
Mhm.
still carrying this conversation with his kid. And he's like, how much I love you, and I never do anything to hurt you. And um, you know how he says the things, it's believable, but also like maybe like a hint of sarcasm, and
Well,
you
yeah,
kind
like
of
the
really don't
way
know how to.
he says it is like you don't believe him.
Yeah, and so that's actually one of the scenes where a lot of people say they don't like Jack Nicholson's performance because they don't understand. But I think that's the point. I think because we as an audience, we don't know what's going on. We don't know how to feel. Like, are we seeing a good side of Jack? Are we seeing that good fatherly figure, or
Mhm.
is that menacing creature really at the surface and ready to
Oh,
do the
I think he's
worst?
at the surface.
It's definitely, yeah. He's definitely trying to break through.
Yeah.
Couple days later, the Overlook Hotel is almost completely, it's like halfway covered with snow. There's so much snow
Mhm.
outside. Danny's playing with his toys on the infamous carpet. He has a bunch of cars and trucks, moving them around. And as he's playing, a ball slowly rolls into the shot and hits his toys. He looks up, we
Mhm.
look down the hallway, there's nothing there. Who
Ugh.
rolled?
Chills.
Who rolled? Yeah, who rolled the ball to him? So he's kind of looking. I actually always laugh at the scene because when he stands up, the way he stands, he's kind of has his chest puffed out and has his arms out from his body.
Yeah.
He's like, Mom. He's walking down that hallway. He really wants to figure out, and he comes across 237.
God. Open this
The door
time.
the door is open now. The key is in the door. The door is
Yeah.
cracked open.
Yeah.
So Danny gets closer and closer to the door, starts to push the door open. We're seeing it from his point of view, and just as we start to enter the room, we fade to Wendy downstairs, kind of checking. I'm assuming the fuses for
Doing
the
Jack's
hotel
job. Yeah.
itself.
Hmm.
Yeah, doing Jack's job exactly. Then she hears this weird sound, and it sounds like screaming, or it's like over and over
Hmm.
again. So she runs to check on Jack, and Jack is asleep in front of the typewriter. And he's clearly having a bad dream and screaming. She wakes him up, and he's freaking out. She's asking what's wrong, and he kind of like looks around. He's like, I had a horrible dream. What was that dream, Lauren?
He had a dream that he killed Wendy and Danny and he chopped them into little pieces. Just what everyone wants to hear.
Absolutely. She's like, oh my
Really?
God. He's like, I
Although
must,
she's probably just flattered that she was in his dream at all at this point because
right,
he
right,
pays her no
absolutely.
mind.
Yes, and she's like, this is the best conversation I've had the entire time I've been here. But she said, don't worry, hon, everything's gonna be all right.
Oh
It was
my
just
god,
a
you're
dream.
so good at that.
So as she's, talking to him, telling him everything's gonna be okay, and kind of bringing him down, we have an establishing shot of Danny from behind, and he's walking towards them, and we can kind of see that he seems a little disheveled from behind, and Wendy gets a little closer to him, and she's like, "Honey, what's wrong?" And as she gets to him and turns him, he actually has bruises, red
Hmm.
markings all over the side of his face and his neck. His sweater's torn up a little bit, and he's sucking on his thumb.
Hmm.
So she, asks him what happened, what's wrong, and he also is in a trance, has nothing to say. Um, she gives him a hug, and she looks back at Jack, and Jack is again staring off into
Oh
space.
god.
And you did this, you
You
did
did this.
this.
Yeah.
Um, uh, she's like, you did this to him, you didn't, and he's kind of just like, I don't. He doesn't have anything to say. He doesn't. Did I do
Hmm.
this? I don't know. So he kind of seems dumbfounded and confused. So now he's pissed, and he's walking through the hotel, and he's on his own, and he's kind of repeating some things that she said, and uh, getting really angry. And he stumbles upon the gold room.
Yep.
He walks in and turns all the lights on, and kind of looks around and sees the bar in there that obviously doesn't have any liquor. He sits down and kind of speaks to himself and says, "God, what I wouldn't do for a stiff drink right now."
Hmm.
Um, covers his face and says, "I'll even sell my soul." And as he pulls his hands down, we have the camera angle is facing him, so we as an audience are staring right at him. When he pulls his hands down, he starts speaking to us and he says, "Oh, hi, Lloyd."
Hmm.
We're we're kind of like, "What?" And he looks around a little bit, and now we get a better view from behind him, and there's a whole bunch of alcohol in the bar. And now we meet Lloyd, the bartender.
Yes, Lloyd.
Lloyd's like, "Well, let me make you a drink."
Mm-hmm.
And they have a little conversation, and Lloyd's making that drink for him, and he's real excited, and he lets him know he doesn't have any money, and Lloyd's like, "No, it's fine. Just drink your drink," you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, says that basically, thank you for saying so. I'm 5 months sober, and I really need this right now. And um, this is the part I'm at in my life. He takes a nice big swig, and he almost responds to that drink like it was the best thing that's ever happened to him. The look on his face, he's just so refreshed, and asks for another one. So now we're having some drinks.
Mm.
What'd you do about the scene? So this is your first time watching it, and there's nobody in the hotel, and now all of a sudden there's a bartender. He's having drinks, and we know that there's no alcohol there.
Yeah.
Um,
I was like, is this like a hallucination? I don't know. Hallucination or I don't know. It was weird. I didn't know what to
yeah, and
think.
then and here we're kind of getting a little bit more background. A little more background on exactly what has happened in the past. And he basically says, I've been sober because I made a mistake, and Wendy's never let me forget about it.
Yeah, he
And
said, "Bitch will
obviously,
never let me forget what happened."
yep.
Specifically.
Um, yes, verbatim right there. And
Yeah.
he's like, it was unintentional, and it could
Uh-huh.
have happened to anybody. Things like that happen, and he feels bad, but at the same time, he's blaming the alcohol, and things happen after a little tiny second. Next thing we know, Wendy's running through the hotel looking for Jack. We hear her yelling for him, and she has a baseball bat in her hand, and
Uh-huh.
she tells him that there's someone else in the hotel with them. And here, at this moment, now we see no alcohol in the bar. Lloyd's gone, and she talks about a woman in a room that tried to strangle Danny.
Yep.
He's just kind of looking at her like, what is happening? Like, how? There's no one else in this hotel, even
Yeah.
though he's just been having a conversation with a ghost.
Yep.
So now Wendy's starting to get a feel that there's something else there. We do a quick cut to Dick Halloran
Yes.
in his room in Miami.
Miami.
Um, he's lying down in his bed watching the television, and there's he has a very interesting room.
Yes.
He has portraits of naked women everywhere off the television and above his bed. But they're talking about a weather report on the TV, and all of a sudden, kind of starts to go into a little bit of a trance.
Yeah, he's getting like a vision.
Yeah. So in this vision, we see Danny sitting in his bed. He's kind of foaming at the mouth,
Yeah, he's like foaming
shaking.
at the mouth. Yeah.
Yeah. And in this exact moment as well, we also cut to, we assume is room 237. There's lots of purple and greens everywhere. We're kind
Uh-huh.
of walking through that room as if we're Danny. So Dick is seeing what Danny's seeing. But we come to realize that it's actually Jack that's currently in the room, looking
Yeah.
at 237 to see what could have, quote unquote, possibly harmed Danny. And as we enter into the bathroom, we see a silhouette of a woman in the bathtub. As she
Uh-huh.
slowly emerges from the bathtub, she's completely naked. She's I guess seducing him in a way. She
Yeah.
gets closer and closer to him, and of course he gets a little grin on his face, like, "Yay, this is gonna be a fun time." She gets closer and closer, and they embrace, they start to kiss. And then just then we start to realize, because of the mirror in the bathroom, Jack sees what he's actually kissing, and it's an old woman.
Like she's
Uh,
decomposing.
yes, so it's an old woman. She's decomposing stuff all over her back, and then he pulls away from her, and she's walking towards him, her hands out for him. We see shots of that same old woman decomposing in the bathtub as she's rising out of it, walking towards him. We keep cutting back to Danny doing his foaming at the mouth, and Dick
Uh-huh.
also envisioning all this as well. Jack pieces out. He's like, "Whoa, that's way too scary for me. I didn't sign up for that."
This laugh that this old woman
Mm-hmm.
has rivals like the Wicked Witch from The Wizard of Oz.
Mm-hmm. No, yep.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
it really does. It's so creepy. Fun fact about both of the women in this scene: neither one of them have ever done any other movie before or after this.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is what they'll forever in Hollywood be known for.
Yeah, this
Um,
was such a fun scene to watch with my family.
I bet. And as I mentioned, the pretty version of the woman coming out of the bathtub,
Hmm.
uh, she is completely naked from head to toe, and it's not even a quick thing. It's
Oh,
very she walks so slow,
so slowly.
and Stanley just keeps the camera on her for as much as possible, and jumping back to Jack is grinning, excited for what's about to happen, and then even the old woman too. I mean, she's showing the world all of her goods as well, even though it's decomposing, and Jack has no interest in any of that.
Hmm.
Um, Dick makes a phone call. He thinks something's wrong up at the Overlook Hotel. Wants to try to figure out how to get up there. Jack heads back to their little apartment and wants to check on Danny and let Wendy know that he went to room 237 and he saw nothing.
Saw
Nothing at
nothing.
all.
Yep. Hmm.
So this is also a point where we're like, okay, there's something going on here. Jack, this is the perfect opportunity for Jack to literally tell her um, that there's something definitely menacing going on here.
Hmm.
Um, he says there's no explanation. He must have done it to himself. Might be something wrong with him. We should probably get him to look at a doctor. Meanwhile, Danny's lying in bed in the other room and just staring. But there's a lot of staring off into oblivion in this film.
But he does such a good job of staring
Does
off.
such a good job.
Yeah.
They do. So when he mentions like we definitely should take him to go see a doctor, and Jack just kind of looks at her and says, "You want to leave the hotel?" And he goes, "It's so fucking typical of you. Finally having a chance to accomplish something. Finally getting his time to write his novel, to make his dream come true. This is a very egotistical, stereotypical man, the
Oh,
type of
yeah.
man, the type of man that you just want to deck in the face really
Yep.
hard.
Yep.
This is very you woman, I'm man. You do this and I do all of this hard work and you're just supposed to be here and you're trying to take all of that away from me. You're like, taking all my masculinity away by stripping me of what I want to do.
Just poor Wendy. Poor Wendy.
Poor Wendy indeed.
Wendy, darling.
She
Yeah.
um he says, "You have fucked up my life so far, and I'm not gonna let you fuck this up." He's so crazy. So he leaves. She's obviously super sad, frustrated,
Uh-huh.
upset, and she just wants what's best for her kid, and he just wants to be a terror. He's walking through the hotel again, kicking things, knocking things off shelves, acting like a literal child. He stumbles heading back towards the gold room, and now there are balloons everywhere. He's confused, like, what just happened?
Yeah.
And Dick has finally got a hold of someone, and he's kind of working out an idea on how to hop on a plane and rent a snowmobile to get up to the Overlook Hotel.
It's called a
Um,
snowcat, Dave.
the snowcat. Yes, he's got to get on that snowcat. The snowcat will take us to the Overlook Hotel, so he has a good plan to get up there. It'll probably take I think he mentions like a day or two to fully get up there.
Mm-hmm.
But Jack enters the gold room, and there's a whole big party happening.
Yeah. You can definitely tell that it's not from the era that they're currently in. It's definitely like 1920s garb for sure.
Yep. Yeah, there's lots of suits, lots of dresses. Like you mentioned, it's very 1920-esque. He heads over to the
Uh-huh.
bar. The bar's restocked again. And there's Lloyd, the bartender, ready to pour him another round. And
Good old
Jack Nicholson's
Lloyd.
performance, their performance in the scene, just the two of them, their conversation, and Jack's just like kind of carefree,
Uh-huh.
excited lifestyle. Like, this is probably the happiest we've seen in the movie so far.
Yeah. Yeah. It's Lloyd.
And yeah, he goes to pay Lloyd, and he actually has money in his wallet this time.
Uh-huh.
Um, and Lloyd reminds him, like, your money's no good here. Orders
It's no
from the
good here.
house, like, yeah, you don't need to pay that. And
Uh-huh.
it's very nice of you, Lloyd. Uh, he kind of stumbles through the party, dances around a little bit, and then one of the waiters comes over and bumps into him and spills a drink all over him. So,
What
this
was the
this waiter,
drink that I like didn't know what it was?
I forget what he says it is. I actually looked it up. I forget the name. It starts with an A, I believe.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a thicker liqueur.
Yeah, which is
So
ew. Like what?
yeah, I don't. Yeah, so
I don't
I feel
want
like
like
people
a
might take
thick
them like
liqueur.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know if people like take them as like shooters or what, but
that's
and even like
disgusting.
on his tray, you can yeah, and when it's on him, and it looks like it's like almost like thick like mustard or
Yeah,
something.
it's
I don't know.
disgusting.
Yeah, so the waiter says, let me go wipe you off. I don't want you to stain your jacket. So they go into the bathroom, and this bathroom is so red.
It's so ugly. I
It's
can't
so
even
ugly.
speak about it.
I mean, it is a bright red. I'm talking Clifford the Big Red Dog red. Like it
Ugh,
is red.
I
I don't know
hated
why I went
it.
to Clifford, but
I hated it.
um, so this scene is very important. They're having a little bit of a conversation as this gentleman is wiping him off, and Jack says, "What's your name?" And the guy says, "My name's Grady, Elbert Grady."
Hmm.
And then Jack just kind of looks at him and he says, "Aren't you the caretaker here?" He says, "Yes, yes, my name's Elbert Grady." And what's important about this conversation?
He basically said, like, he questions him. He's like, "Are you married?" He's like, "Yes." "Do you have kids?" "Yes." He's like, "Well, that's interesting because it's obviously the guy who he hears about in the beginning in his interview that chopped up his wife and kids." And Jack, it's so funny. He goes, "Well, I think you like chopped up your wife and kids." Like, "No, sir, I have no recollection of that at all."
The way he just stares at him, like Grady
Yeah.
just stares at him, like I did what? And the way Jack's staring back at him, like you're crazy,
Yeah.
and I think you're dead.
Mm.
He says his family's just hanging out around right now, so he
Hmm.
doesn't understand why Jack would say something like that.
Yeah. But, Jack is like, you know, "You're the caretaker." He's like, "No." And he says, "You are the caretaker. You've always, taker. I should know.
Dun dun dun.
I've always been here." Weird.
Interesting.
Weird.
Weird indeed.
Yeah.
So a lot of things about this scene. One thing I think is really cool that Stanley Kubrick does in this scene, usually in film when two characters are talking, they call it the 180 rule,
Hmm.
which is where you're constantly seeing the actors like as if they're actually speaking to one another, but we can also as an audience member see them side by side. We understand. I feel like they probably don't do that as much anymore, but back in the day, like the filming techniques were kind of more strict. But Jack is actually with his back to the camera, and Grady's facing halfway through him. So you're not seeing them actually. You're not seeing both of their faces as they're having this conversation full on.
Yeah.
So it's kind of feels distorted a little bit, which I think is cool. And Jack is facing the mirror, and Grady is facing the urinals. So another thing about this scene is so in the beginning when he's having the interview and they're talking about the incident that happened where Grady killed his family, Ullman says that his name is Charles Grady,
Okay.
and
Mm.
here it's Delbert Grady.
Delbert. Yeah.
So we'll circle back to the meaning of what we think the meaning of that is here in a little bit. Another fun thing, interesting Pittsburgh fact where I'm from. There's actually a bar in Lawrenceville, right outside of the city, that is called the Abbey.
Hmm.
In the men's restroom, there's actually a large photograph of the scene of Jack talking to Grady in the red bathroom,
Hmm.
and it's right above the urinals. And I always just thought that was so cool. I have a
Interesting.
picture of it on my phone because I went in there and I was like, "Wow, this is so cool." But yeah, it's just right above the urinals, and I'm just kind of like, "Oh, this is a safe place, especially because this used to be an old funeral home."
Yeah.
So that makes it a lot more fun. The whole lady basically says, "I have no recollection of what you're talking about. My family's running around right here, but you're the caretaker, Jack." He talks about how if his wife and son are acting up, that he should correct them. Just, I don't know. That's the way he says correct them.
You just know what he
Um,
means. Yeah.
so he kind of puts the idea into Jack's head that, if they're trying to take him away from the hotel or take him away from what he wants to do, sometimes you just have to do what you have to do and correct them.
Yep.
Um, yeah. So pretty good scene. I feel like this is the scene where everything kind of comes together in a big way, and we kind of enter into what I feel is like the final act of the film.
Yeah.
So now we have a lot of information, and Wendy's in her room. She's kind of having a dialogue with herself. How can I get out of here? I have to get Danny to help. And she starts to hear Ram. She kind of
Red
stops and
rum.
oh, this is a fun one. We should just recreate this whole film, to be honest.
Daddy's like,
Um,
red rum.
yes, Red Ram. So she goes into the bedroom, and she obviously she knows it's coming from Danny. She walks into the bedroom, and he's sitting up in bed, again staring off into space, and he
Uh-huh.
just keeps repeating Rad Ram, and she's
That's so
trying
good.
she's trying to snap him out of it, but not scare him. And she says,
Yeah.
Danny, and he says, Danny's not here, Mrs. Torrance.
Yep.
So now Tony is speaking for Danny.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she tells Danny, she tells Tony, let Danny speak, and um, you know, Danny's no longer available, Mrs. Torrance. This is
Mm-hmm.
between me and you now. Jack's kind of wandering around the hotel at the same exact time. The radio guys are trying to get a hold of the family, and we watch Jack as he takes all the little parts out of the
Yep.
out of the radio out, so no one could ever get a hold of them.
Yeah. Fun.
So now we are on the title card, 8 a.m. We don't know what day it is. All we know it is 8 a.m. And Dick is on a Continental airline flying to go see the family. He
Yes.
just knows something's wrong, and
I
he's
love
gonna
him.
go. Yeah, what a guy! He's
What a
gonna he's gonna
guy.
go he's gonna go save the day. We always need a hero in a horror film, so this is
Yep.
gonna be Dick's gonna be that guy for us. He rents his snowcat from his good old friend,
Thank you
and
for saying snowcat.
I know I didn't want to get yelled at. Just kidding. So we got the snowcat reserved. As Dick is driving to go get that snowcat, he notices there's an accident. It's snowing really bad. They're
Mm-hmm.
basically alerting everyone to get off the road. But he sees an accident on the road. It's a semi truck and what is a red Volkswagen Beetle.
Red
So
rum.
Rad Ram. So funny little thing about this scene is I talked about how Stephen King hated this adaptation of the film. He didn't want Stanley Kubrick to make this movie. Stephen King actually wrote a screenplay for Stanley Kubrick on his own novel that Stanley Kubrick
Okay.
was like, no, I'm gonna write my own. So Stanley Kubrick got with another novelist, and he and she wrote the screenplay to this film. And Stephen King just kept talking shit on it while they were filming. So in this scene, Stanley Kubrick decided to have the semi truck crush a red Beetle, which is the same type of car that Stephen King drove at the time.
My God.
So it was
Wow.
Stanley's way of killing King off in his own
Oh
in
my
his own story.
God. Of
Petty
course.
bitches. Love
Yeah,
it.
petty, petty. Like, if Stephen King didn't want this movie made by him, why didn't he just, like, doesn't he, like, own the rights to the story? Like, I don't, you know what I mean?
So Stanley Kubrick actually bought the rights to The Shining. So technically at that moment in time, Stanley Kubrick owned the rights to create the film for himself.
Okay.
So, building off of that, Stephen King eventually wrote a screenplay for his film again in a mini-series type of format that he
Mm-hmm.
wanted to turn into a mini-series to be faithful to the novel. But he
Mm-hmm.
couldn't get it made unless Stanley Kubrick gave him the rights back.
And of course, he didn't. I'm assuming.
So, he actually did. But he made Stephen King sign a clause, an actual binding contract that he would no longer shit talk The Shining or Jack Nicholson's performance in public.
And he wouldn't do it.
He did. Yep, and they made the miniseries.
Oh, they
Yep,
did?
they did. I've actually never watched it.
Huh. Miniseries is always the move. I
Mm,
don't know. I don't know. I love a miniseries.
especially for Stephen King's novels. I mean, you had Tommyknockers, you had It, obviously The Shining, Storm of the Century. Um, I think Stephen King's novels are so elaborate that I think doing it in a miniseries type format, it kind of makes sense.
I mean, the movie's
So
already almost 3 hours long already.
I know.
Just like
which I definitely feel like this movie. I feel like if I was behind this film, I would probably trim like 15 minutes off of it.
Just 15?
Savage. Okay, 16. Just kidding.
Uh,
Um, yeah, I mean, I do think that I understand why it's as long as it is. I understand why some of the scenes that I think could be cut down are the way they are, is because it kind of goes back to feeling like you are there and isolated and you're in these scenes and it's, you're a part of this dread and just kind of stuck, I
hmm
guess.
I
That's how I look at it.
I will say, like, you warned me that there would be like very long scenes and that some people say they're boring. I never
Mhm.
felt like that because I felt like every moment wasn't. I know I was like joking, being like only 15, but like I do feel like
Yeah.
um I didn't wasn't bored at any time. I don't feel like any of the scenes were like really too long.
Mhm.
But like they were all the moments I feel like were necessary.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I would definitely trim a little bit off, but I understand the idea behind it, and I think it works in the context of what the film is and what Stanley Kubrick was trying to say. So yeah, so we're back in their little apartment. Danny's no longer saying red rum. Wendy kind of lets him know, I'm gonna go check on your dad.
Yeah, go talk
And
to
we
your
see her.
dad.
All right, hon. So she grabs she grabs the baseball bat in the background and heads out the door.
Mhm, mhm,
So this scene is, in my opinion, for probably the next 20 minutes of the film, I think this is probably my favorite scene in the movie.
mhm. Okay.
The acting is incredible, but also knowing how many takes this took, how exhausted Shelley Duvall was in the scene, uh, makes it rough to watch because she is crying a lot. I mean, she's on the verge of literal hysterics in the scene.
Yeah.
So what's happening is she enters the area of the hotel where Jack has been writing his novel. She has no idea where he's at. He's not at his typewriter. But she's like, well, I'm gonna go check to see how great his novel is coming along. So, so she heads over to the typewriter and we see her. The camera angle is as if we are the typewriter. She approaches and the look on her face kind of becomes shocked, a little disturbed. So we as an audience are kind of wonder what she's seeing.
Yeah.
And now we finally see. And what does it say, Lauren?
It says, "Work and no play makes Jack a dull boy."
Hmm, interesting. So she sees this and she's like, well, that's not cool. She kind of pulls
Mhm.
the page up a little bit, and that's all that's written on the page. She seems a little, okay, a little confused. She looks over and sees a stack of papers, of already written papers that he's already typed out. I mean, there has to be like 400 or 500 pages here.
Yeah.
And the very top sheet of paper says, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, written over and over and over and over again.
Mhm.
Camera zooms in, it's real dramatic, and we're like, okay, this is really weird.
Yeah.
She starts to pull each sheet up. Every sheet has all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Every
Mhm.
page, however, every page is written a little different. There's different formats. There's, it's written like a screenplay, or it's all jumbled up together. There's lots of errors each page, but no matter what, it all says the same thing over and over again. She's kind of freaking out a little bit. This is what my husband's been working on all this time. Like, this is insane.
Mhm.
And as she's doing this, the camera, I love this camera angle. I'm nerding out a
Yeah.
little bit. The camera kind of slowly establishes behind her, so we see her from the back. And as we're moving, Jack kind of comes into a frame, so he's standing behind her, and he says, "How do you like it?" And she flips around with her baseball bat ready. He just scared the shit out of her. She
Mhm.
doesn't really she doesn't know how to take this novel, and she's staring at him with that bat, holding it really, really, really tight. She's scared, but
Mhm.
she's also trying to keep her guard up. She's backing up. He's getting closer and closer to her. I mean, Jack Nicholson's performance here is just he's scary.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Like, this is the psychotic boyfriend, husband, man, whoever that, I mean, just literally just scares the shit out of
I
you.
mean, if Wendy Darling didn't know he was crazy by now, she definitely knows.
For real though. Yeah. She has finally learned after all this time, all work and no play really makes Jack a dull boy.
Yeah.
But his dullness is definitely psychotic.
Uh-huh.
And
Dull like maybe an axe.
maybe an axe. I'm thinking, so, he says, "Whoa, what are you doing down here?" And she says, I just want to talk. And he
Can
says,
you just act this entire movie as a one-man show?
coming soon to a theater near you. So he asks her, what do you want to talk about? She's like, I can't remember. He's like, you can't remember? All right, I'm just having fun with it. So we as the scene is happening, we are also seeing what's happening with Danny, and he's actually shining into what is happening downstairs. So he's seeing what is happening here, and
Mm-hmm.
he's also getting flashes of the hotel, and we also get a flash of a door that
Mm-hmm.
says Red Rum on it, and which we know Danny was saying Red Rum multiple times.
Do you want to know
Um,
a fun little thing? My
yeah.
dad, at this point, he's like, "Do you know what red rum is backwards?"
Aw, Dad.
I was
No,
like,
Dad.
we all were like, "What are you doing?"
So did you know that? Did you know what it was?
I had no idea. And
Okay.
I, you know, I was like, Dad, that better not be like a big part in this movie. And then it ends up being a big part in the movie.
Whoops.
Whoops.
We'll forgive you, Dad. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean in today's pop culture, Red Rum is super popular.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, and even people like yourself who don't know what it is, it's just kind of interesting. Even when you're hearing it on the screen, red rum. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, what is he saying? Red rum, red
Yeah.
drum. Like what?
Yeah.
Um, which kind of, I think definitely makes it creepy.
Yeah.
So we're back to Jack and Wendy, and she's like, I think we need to get Danny some help. And Jack says, what do you think we should do with him? And she's starting to cry. He has this like the craziest face. And
Craziest
she's like,
faces.
I don't know. And he thinks, I think you have some very definite ideas. And what's great about the scene too is that he's slowly walking towards her. She's
Uh-huh.
slowly walking backwards. I mean, if I was Shelley Duvall, I'd probably bump into everything and fall over.
Yeah.
But I feel like both of the actors were so into this scene, like they were so their characters that it's just incredible. And she's like, I think we should take Danny to see a doctor. There's definitely something wrong with him. And Jack's like, when do you think we should take him to the doctor? When do you think that should happen? She says, as soon as possible. And
Mm-hmm.
he mocks her. And as soon as possible.
I
Um,
laughed so I don't know
He's
why.
like, I really, people talk about actors who really get lost in their roles, and the number one person I always think of is Heath Ledger with the Joker. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think that in this scene, I really think Jack really became Jack, and
Yeah.
I think he really got into his character at this point in time. And I mean, I was scared. I'm scared for him. Like this is horror right here. Like this is a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's not some big monster. It's not a slasher. He hasn't killed anybody. And it's so psychological. It's so real life, and I think that's what makes it really creepy.
Yeah.
He asked, like, are you concerned about me? You're so worried about Danny's health, and what about me? He's like, has it occurred to you that I agreed to overlook this hotel until May, but none of that matters to you. All you care about is, taking care of Danny and yourself, and I did this contract, and I'm important. This is my responsibility. What if I fail to live up to my responsibilities? And at this point in time, now she's backing up the steps, and she starts swinging the bat at him very very gently, but kind of just, stay away, stay away. I just want to go
Yeah.
back to my room. I
Threatening.
want to be with Danny. Yes, very, yeah. And, he's getting closer and closer. She says, I'm so confused. I just need a chance to think things over. She is literally hysterical. Like, Shelley's
Hysterical.
acting is incredible. And he says, you've had your whole fucking life to think things over. What's a good few minutes to wait to think of it more? She says, stay away from me. And he like reaches his hands up like I'm gonna grab you. Like he's
Mm-hmm.
really taunting her at this point, and definitely getting closer. And she's like, don't hurt me. Stay away from me. And he says, Wendy? And she says, stay away. And he goes, Wendy, darling, light of my life. I'm not gonna hurt you.
That's so
You
funny.
didn't you didn't let me finish my sentence. It's incredible. I said I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in. I'm gonna bash them right the fuck in. So here at this point in time, if we haven't already been absolutely mortified of Jack, we've we're, we've we're off the deep end now. Like Jack is gone. This is a whole nother level of terror. They go up the steps, and finally she decides to hit him over the head with the bat,
Mm-hmm.
really hard, really hard. I mean,
Yep.
it almost looks real. Like it almost looks like she actually hit him over the head. I don't even know how they
Mm-hmm.
faked it.
Yeah.
Um, he then tumbles down the stairs very dramatically and lands on the bottom foyer. She's like, "Yeah, yeah, go me." Now we cut to her dragging him through the dining room into the kitchen, and she decides to lock him up in the dry storage area. He slowly starts to come to and tries to get her, but she locks him in there before he can attack her. He's up against the door trying to break out. He's trying to, he's like, "Let me out. I'll forget about the whole thing." He plays the victim. "I'm so hurt, Wendy. Like I'm hurt real bad. Come help me. I'm dizzy." And she's like, I'm not giving into this, Jack. Like you stay in there. I'm gonna get help." She grabs a knife for protection and she goes on her way.
Mm-hmm.
So Jack is stuck in there. Wendy goes out of the hotel to go check out the snowcat. He just informed her before she heads out that he says, yeah, you're ever gonna get out of here, you should go check out the snowcat that's here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he cut the battery out of the engine. He tore apart the radio. So now they are absolutely trapped here with no
Yep.
escape.
No escape.
He comes to in the dry storage room. Looks like he had some food to keep his stamina up. He has a little bit of a limp, and as he's in there, he starts to have a conversation with Grady. Grady's on the
Yeah.
other side of the door.
Yep.
Grady's like, "Well, I'm gonna help you out of here. You should probably go correct the situation."
Right.
So Grady lets him out of there. So now he's out of that room. And we cut to Dick Halloran. He's in his snowcat now, heading up to the Overlook Hotel. He gets closer and closer. So then we cut to another infamous scene, and Danny is awake. Wendy's taking a nap because
Mm-hmm.
some time has went by, and Danny is saying, "Red rum, red rum, red rum." I think Danny says red rum like 40 sometimes
Ugh.
in this movie. And just the way the kid says it, I mean, it's
It's
very
creepy
creepy.
kid. Yeah. Creepy kid.
He finds the knife next to the bed. He grabs onto it, kind of walks around the room, walks around his mom's bed, finds some lipstick, and writes red rum on the door, which is the exact vision that he had a little bit
Mm-hmm.
ago. It's written, the R's, the E's backwards, and
Mm-hmm.
Wendy finally wakes up. She sees he has a knife in his hand. She's like, "What are you doing?" She takes the knife out of his hand and grabs onto him. And behind him, she can see into the mirror across the room. She can see the door. And what does red rum say in reverse through the mirror?
Says murder.
Bum
Mm-hmm.
bum bum
Bum,
bum
bum, bum.
bum. So
Which I
red rum
already
is
knew at this
indeed,
point. Thanks, Dad.
yeah, it's ruined. It's all ruined. For all you listeners, red rum means murder. So we should have started the podcast off that way. So right when she realizes murder, she's obviously highly freaked out, and then we hear a big crash, and Jack has an axe on the outside of the hotel room.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to break down that door with the axe. Jack Nicholson actually used to be a volunteer fire marshal.
Oh, interesting.
So they made fake doors that were easy for him to break apart, but because he was so good at already doing that, they had to eventually use basically a real door because he was so good at doing it. So
Damn.
they needed to make it as real as possible. So yay for Jack Nicholson. So Wendy and Danny run into the bathroom. They lock themselves in. The bathroom has red rum written on it. So that's where they're hiding out. They're hiding out behind the red rum door.
Definitely a safe place to hide behind a door that says murder.
For real though, it's like
Yeah.
a marking. Like, come on in. You have an axe. It's a great place for you. So Jack is now outside of the bathroom door, and Danny escapes through the bathroom window, but it's too small for Wendy to get through. He slides down this huge snow embankment outside of the window, so he is safe, where Wendy is not. Unfortunately, she has a knife in there with her. She's, asking him not to do what he's doing, and he says, little pigs, won't you let me come in?" He does this little nursery rhyme there,
Uh-huh.
which I think is really creepy.
It's so creepy.
So he starts throwing that axe into this door now. She's screaming hysterically again. I mean, Shelley Duvall actually seems like she thinks that Jack is going to kill her.
Mm-hmm.
Like I
Yeah.
almost feel like I'm watching a real life scene play out in front of me as opposed to two actors doing their thing.
Yeah. I agree.
Um, Finally gets to the point where there's a huge enough hole in the door. He presses his head against it, and obviously the infamous scene of "Here's Johnny."
Mm-hmm.
Uh, have you seen? Were you familiar with the scene at all? Were you familiar with anything about this movie?
I no, not at
So
all.
you've never seen like the image of Jack Nicholson with his head in the
I
door?
have, but I didn't realize it was from this movie. Obviously, I've heard of like the "Here's Johnny" thing, but I didn't know it was from this movie. I had no idea what it was in reference to. And there's a scene that comes up at the very, very end of the movie that I see a ton of memes of, and I had no idea where that was from either. So I just thought it was some random Jack Nicholson movie. Yeah, I
You thought
didn't
it was
know
like
where it
One
was
Flew Over the
from.
Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah, something.
Um, yeah. So finally, he's to the point where he can definitely get into this bathroom and take care or correct his wife.
Mm-hmm.
Um, However, he hears a sound outside that kind of shakes him out of his demonic state, and it's the sound of the snowcat.
Yes.
So he's like, "Wait a minute! I got rid of the snowcat. No one could take care of it. Like they couldn't escape with that." Um, and we come to find out that it's Dick has arrived at the hotel,
Mm-hmm.
and Jack decides to go venture out and check out what is happening. So he has his limp. Wendy's trying to get out of the bathroom, and Dick is now entered into the hotel. Jack
Mm-hmm.
is kind of like a cat and mouse scene playing out in front of us. We know Jack's lurking around, but because the hotel doesn't make sense at all, we don't know where Jack is exactly. And Dick is walking around trying to find them as well. And there's a long hallway, a bunch of pillars, a bunch of doors. So Dick's calling for them, checking anybody there. And once he gets to the end of the hallway, we think he's a safety. Jack jumps out from behind one of the beams and slams an axe right into your good old friend Dick.
Yeah, I hated this scene.
The music is like insane. Like
Mm-hmm.
you feel it. Uh, Scatman Crothers acting here, his scream, his pain, agony. He does such a good job, and Jack continues on. You know, he just killed Dick, and he has got some blood on his axe, and now he's trying to find Danny. He knows where Wendy's at, and he knows Danny's escaped. So um, here, Wendy's trying to find her way out of the hotel to go get Danny,
Mm-hmm.
and we stumble upon Wendy seeing some of the ghosts in this hotel. It's almost like
Yeah.
something was awakened. One of the first things that she sees is, do you remember?
Yeah, I do. Do you? I'm making you say
Yeah.
it.
So, as she's wandering through the hotel, she sees someone dressed up in a costume. Um, some say it's a bear, some say it's a dog.
Yeah,
I
I
feel like
had
it definitely looks.
no idea what this animal was. No
It's
idea.
definitely a hybrid. I think I'd probably go more with the bear aspect. But someone dressed in a bear costume, giving a blowjob to a man in a tuxedo.
Yeah,
Interesting. So
such a
the
weird
bear,
scene.
yeah, the bear sits up. The human dressed as a bear sits up, makes eye contact with Wendy, the gentleman, leans forward as well, so they're both staring at her,
Mm-hmm.
as if they've been caught. And she's just kind of like, "What the fuck?" and just
Yeah.
continues on. Um, Jack continues on trying to find Danny. He's outside now. Danny and him are playing cat and mouse. Danny decides to run into the maze,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously there's tons of snow.
Yeah.
So Danny's leaving footprints
Yep.
everywhere. Um,
Everywhere.
Jack is following these footsteps now. He's on to him. However, Danny, being the small intellectual that he is, he kind of puts this together in his mind and says, "I'm going to start walking backwards
He's
through
so
my
smart.
footsteps." So smart. Like, we
So
all
smart,
strive to be
Danny.
Danny in
Yeah.
situations like this. Wendy then stumbles upon poor Dick, dead, blood-covered body.
Yeah.
Wendy's obviously completely freaked out and then sees Mr. Grady, the same Grady that was in the bathroom talking to Jack. However, Grady has a huge gash down the top of his head and through his
Mm-hmm.
face.
Was that Grady?
It was Grady, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Um, or maybe not.
He
Someone who looks like
look.
Grady. Grady's
Yeah.
friend.
He look. Yeah.
Yeah, Grady's friend.
Yeah. Grady's friend.
Another one of the random ghosts in this hotel. So they're still continuing their cat and mouse game in the maze. Wendy then stumbles into another room with a bunch of dead bodies. She sees actual like skeletons.
Cobwebs.
cobwebs. I mean, very, very gothic looking scene
Mm-hmm.
as she sees the elevators at the end of the hallway, the bright red doors, and now she's seeing the same things Danny was. All the blood
Yep.
gushing out of the hotel doors, gallons of blood. Blood, blood, blood.
Gallons. Yeah.
And then Jack is in the maze and Danny screaming top of his lungs. Danny Danny continues on, Jack continues on. I mean, it's definitely I like how long the scene is because we were told it takes a long time to get through this maze, so we really know they're deep into the depths of it. But finally, Danny has escaped, and Wendy just happens to be right there. They jump into I'm gonna call it the Catmobile. Can I call it that?
Oh, I like that even better. Catmobile. I
Okay, so
love
they jump into the
that.
snowcat. Jack's still wandering around the maze. He's starting to get a little bit tired. He obviously had a little head trauma from the swing of the bat, and
Mm-hmm.
I
He's
feel
not
like he's a
making
little
any sense
malnourished.
at all.
Nope, words are no longer forming. He's cold. It's super cold outside. There's tons of snow all around. He starts to give up a little bit. He slows down, and then finally, bam! It cuts to a
Him
shot of
frozen.
his eyes are up. He seems annoyed, like he's been his
Frozen.
whole life. So Jack has died.
Jack is
He did not
gone.
succeed. He did not succeed as correcting his family for how they act.
Mm-hmm.
So we have one last scene in the film here, and we slowly establish through the gold room as we inch closer and closer to some photos on the wall. They're
Mm-hmm.
black and white photos, and we zoom into one of a large party in the gold room. People are
Mm-hmm.
dressed similar to how they were dressed in the scene when Jack entered, and everyone was dressed looked like the 20s.
Yeah.
And in the scene, there's something very interesting about the scene. Lauren, what is this picture?
Well, Jack is right up in front, smiling and just right in front. It's Jack.
It's Jack. Oh, we see what the photograph says. It says Overlook Hotel, July 4th ball, 1921.
1921.
However, Jack is in this picture, front and center.
Mm-hmm.
It's Jack Nicholson. It is Jack Torrance. It is Jack.
Yeah.
So this movie takes place in the 80s. This
Mm-hmm.
picture is taken in the 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the end of the film. That is the last shot of the film. It's Jack's menacing face, front row and center of this huge party in the 1920s at the Overlook Hotel.
Yep.
And we cut to the end credits at this point, and we have now watched The Shining.
The end.
The end. What do you think of the ending, Lauren?
It was definitely shocking for sure.
Mhm.
But I'm like, okay, well then what is Jack now? Like, is he a ghost? Is he reincarnated? Like, who is he? What is he?
Yeah, I think that's the great thing about the ending too. I've mentioned this before in this movie. It's very ambiguous. There's not a definite answer. Stanley Kubrick doesn't really like to explain his films. He wants people to make their own interpretations.
Well, and I hate
Unfortunately,
that. It's like, just tell me.
right. Unfortunately, Stanley Kubrick passed away back in 1999. So, even in today's standards, there's no way to even really find out. This movie was not very well received when it came out, but over time, especially thanks to the internet, this movie is huge. This movie is on so many critics, movie outlets, magazines, lists of top favorite horror movies, top favorite scenes, quotable moments. This movie just kind of took a life of its own, and there's so many things online about what this movie means,
Mm.
all these extra details. So the ending, what I get from the ending, what some people get, other people have other ideas. What I understand is there's a constant cycle. So a
Mm-hmm.
constant cycle in that hotel, and Jack has always been there. Jack is just constantly reincarnated as
Okay,
different
so
people.
was
You know,
reincarnation.
that's what I think. I know some people think that as well. There's obviously other ideas. I think you can take it all sorts of different ways, but that's why Grady's like, you've always been the caretaker here, and
Mm-hmm.
he remembers the 1920s ballroom. It's like that sixth cycle. It's almost like the hotel itself is a living, breathing thing that's constantly going to keep recreating these memories and these moments, and that's why Danny can shine, and the hotel is giving these images to everyone
Mm-hmm.
because these things just keep constantly happening. And I think that's why Grady has a different name. I think that was intentional,
Mm.
especially knowing that Stanley Kubrick has such a attention to detail.
Yeah.
He makes things the way that they are for certain reasons. So I feel like that was definitely intentional because he would have caught that he,
Part of me
didn't.
wants to like go to the beginning of the film when everyone was leaving and see if
Mhm.
I can spot anyone, like any person in the picture that was like in, you know what I mean, in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think again, I think to me, I think that's what makes the movie fun. I think this movie has so much rewatch value to it. Yes, it's long. Yes, there to some people there are slower moments. But I think because there's so much to study in the film, that it just makes it super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like every time I watch it, I get different ideas or different things come up where I'm like, that's something right there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but one of the big theories about the movie is that it was basically Stanley Kubrick's apology for faking the video of the moon landing.
What?
Have you ever heard about Have you ever heard about
No.
this?
What are you talking about?
All right, so I've heard this so many times. They actually made a documentary, like a theatrical documentary film called Room 237 about all the things surrounding the making of this film and
Mm.
the conspiracy theories. But one of the most popular ones is I'm going to read this to you. Conspiracy theorists point to several symbolisms in the film as evidence that Stanley Kubrick was involved in faking the footage of the moon landing.
What?
So they, so yes, we went to the moon. However, the footage of the moon landing is not real, and that Stanley Kubrick filmed it. The reason people say this is that there are several symbols of 11 throughout the film.
Mm.
The pattern of the hotel carpet in which Danny is playing in his Apollo 11 sweater is the exact shape of the lunar launch pad. The pages of Jack's novel reads, "All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy." The all could be interpreted as A11 or Apollo 11.
The hell?
The large Native American wall tapestry against the wall that Jack is throwing the ball at resembles rockets. The Apollo 11 vehicle that landed on the moon was called the Eagle. Jack's typewriter is an Adler, which is the German word for eagle.
Okay, that one's a
Um,
stretch.
yes, there are several wooden eagles in the hotel manager's office. The manager has a U.S. flag on his desk and is wearing red, white, and blue colors. Some interpret this to mean that a represents the government with whom Jack has entered into a contract. Yeah, so there's all this talk that Stanley Kubrick's the one that filmed the moon landing. I've actually heard that before. He said that people caught on to it and that this was his way. So he was telling the film, but sprinkling these things throughout as an apology, and also like a confession. Yes, I did it. Yes, I'm sorry about it. But here's an actual film for you to watch.
Oh my God.
So weird.
Has he ever did he ever comment on it?
Nope, nope. He always said that any interpretations of the film is led up to the audience, and that
That
he would
is
never.
crazy.
Yeah, there are talks if you watch the whole film. There's a lot of signs, storytellings about the Native Americans getting overtaken by Americans and
Hmm.
stuff like that. Different symbolisms throughout, such as images of Indians on all the food in the pantry when they're in there. I don't know. I feel like a lot of these are definitely stretches. I do think that Stanley Kubrick has a good eye for different symbolism and different things. However, I do feel like you said some of these things are definitely a stretch.
Yeah, the eagle and the German, that's a stretch.
Right.
100%.
Um, there's also one stating that they think that the whole film is Stanley Kubrick talking about abuse and how abuse is a man towards a woman, a man towards himself, and a man towards his child.
Hmm.
Uh, they say there's hints throughout the film that there's a loss of innocence and that the main character is actually Danny and his struggle with the fact that his father was sexually abusing him.
Hmm.
And I also think this one's a stretch too. People point out different things that Jack was reading a Playgirl magazine in the hotel room to insinuate that he may have an attraction to men. He may be a repressed gay man who's, he doesn't like his life. He doesn't like his life with Wendy because he can't be himself.
Mhm.
They talk about how in Danny's room there's always bears lying around, and then the scene with the bear and the blowjob is giving into the idea that things like that were happening behind closed doors, possibly
Oh.
between Jack and Danny.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and also the scene when Jack and Danny are in the room, and he's like, "I'm not going to hurt you guys. You're going to hurt us, Dad." No, and he's hugging him and stuff. And then the next scene, we see Jack at the typewriter, and that's when Danny comes through, having gone into room 237, has the marks on his head or on his neck, and they say that Jack abused him in the bedroom, and that was Danny, like the real thing that actually happened, were not the ghost, that it was actually Jack that had hurt
Oh.
Danny. Um, Jack, the reason a lot of those types of things are talked about is because Stanley Kubrick has stated multiple times that he doesn't believe in heaven, he doesn't believe in hell, so he doesn't believe in the existence of ghosts. So a lot of people think that he had bigger intentions with this film, that the supernatural side of Stephen King's novel doesn't exist,
Hmm.
which is why Stephen King does not like the movie, because his movie's about all the supernatural elements. In Stephen King's book, the hotel is alive. It's an actual living creature
Hmm.
that is constantly keeping these ghosts trapped, which we kind of talked about with Jack in the picture. Um, so Stanley Cooper has mentioned he doesn't believe in any of these things. That's why people are diving deep into like the deeper meaning behind everything. In all the scenes when he's speaking with ghosts, there is always a mirror involved.
Yeah.
Jack is always talking to a mirror.
I did notice that
Uh,
there's the mirror was like a big part of this movie.
um, so even people mention something along the lines of, well, that's not true because Jack, when he's locked in the pantry, Grady lets him out of the pantry, and there's no mirror there. However, if you look at the door, it has a mirrored image, like a stainless steel image, so you can actually kind of see a reflection. If you look into that stainless steel, even though it's warped, it's still a mirror in a sense.
Uh,
We also don't physically see Grady in that scene, so uh, there's people that think that Jack found his own way out. I don't know, it's just fun. There's just so many ideas about the movie and the deeper meanings. And again, some of them are stretches, some of them are kind of make sense in a weird way. And I feel like every time you rewatch it, if you're just focusing on one conspiracy theory and then the next time you watch it, you're focusing on another one, I feel like you slowly start to see these little things here and there. So
yeah.
I think that makes The Shining kind of a fun little thing to pick apart.
And I heard it was a rough time filming like this from the Stanley Kubrick
Yeah, so Stanley
aspect.
Kubrick, yeah, so he was very demanding of his actors. He would have
Uh-huh.
them redo scenes over and over again. He would taunt Shelley Duvall on
Yeah.
set. He would tell her, she wasn't doing a good job and that she was holding everybody back. That she needs to be more hysterical. That she just wasn't giving a good performance and everyone else was, and she needs to make up for that. Shelley Duvall actually had an emotional breakdown. She went on Dr. Phil many, many years later, of course, and
What?
she talked about how emotionally distressed she was. She did lose her hair. She was so exhausted from filming the scene on the stairs with the bat because she was crying so much and she had to do so many takes that Guinness World Book of Records takes. They had to do it so many times, and she had to be hysterical each and every time. She would be so dehydrated that she would feel like she was going to pass out. She had to have water with her, so she had to constantly drink her water to keep her hydrated. She would pour water under her eyes so she could help her tears fall a little easier.
Uh-huh.
Um, just just insane. And
Yeah.
Scatman Crothers, who played Dick, was also felt the same exact way. They made them do the scene where Dick is talking to Danny about The Shining. They did that take. I think I read like 30 sometimes, just over and over again. And Jack Nicholson actually came to Scatman Crothers' aid during one scene where they're talking because Kubrick wanted to keep doing the scene over and over again, and Jack Nicholson was just like, we can't keep doing this. And I guess Scatman Crothers actually cried on set
Oh
that
my
day
God.
and said something along the lines of like, Mr. Kubrick, I don't know what else you want me to do. So Jack Nicholson told Stanley to take it easy on him, and Scatman Crothers actually said that he didn't have a good time filming the movie.
Yeah.
It was so emotionally damaging that I guess they were doing like 16, 18-hour shoots every day. It was supposed to be shot over 4 to 6 months and ended up taking a year, like I mentioned earlier. So, yeah, just a lot of stress behind the scenes.
Yeah, it
So,
sounds like it. That's awful.
yeah. So, well, Lauren, we have reached our reaction shots,
Yes.
and I've been waiting for this moment. What is your reaction to Stanley Kubrick's 1980 psychological horror film, The Shining?
Not a huge fan. There are
Lauren,
Go ahead, say
I,
it.
I thought that was going to be the answer, but I so deep down was hoping that you were going to blow my mind and be like, "This was such an amazing film." But it's okay. I get it. I get it.
Well, the one shining part in this entire movie was Jack Nicholson's performance. I was
Hmm.
like I said before, I was blown away. I don't feel like I've ever seen anyone act like that intensely before, and I don't know, portrayed crazy that well.
Hmm. Yeah.
That was like the one thing that I kept shaking my head being like, wow, he's like really phenomenal in this. I like the premise of the movie. Like maybe I would like the book better. I
Okay.
like the premise of it being like this creepy hotel. I don't feel like Jack Nicholson and Shelley had good chemistry at all. I feel like he totally like ate her in every scene. And I know like I feel like that's different from how you feel because you really like her acting in this movie, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
I
I
do.
feel like
I
he
do.
just like gobbled her up and like he made her like disappear in every scene. But you enjoyed her acting?
I do. I think I don't think she. I mean, she didn't blow me away like Jack Nicholson does in the film.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do think that her emotional reactions to things, even if they were coming from a genuine, actual, emotionally draining real life scenario,
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like in that, she gives her all. I will say that from how I feel about what you're saying with Shelley Duvall, I don't think Stanley Kubrick wrote her character very well.
Yeah.
I don't think Shelley Duvall had a lot to work with character wise.
Yeah.
She's just a woman to Jack.
Mm-hmm.
She's just the wife. She's the mother, she's the wife, and that's it. I don't feel like I know anything about her. So
Yeah.
there's nothing to me, I feel like there was nothing for Shelley Duvall to really work off of. So I think a lot of her acting had to come from the emotional depth, which is why I like it.
Mm-hmm.
But I do understand your take on her, getting ate up by Jack all the time.
All
But
the time. That
yeah,
and so her character wasn't fleshed out very well. The other one that I didn't feel like was given enough attention was like Scatman Crothers. They definitely could have done way more with him, I
hmm.
think. And I did read the spoiler. I did read in the book he lives. Correct? Yeah.
Correct.
I
Yep.
definitely felt like his death was so premature. It was so unnecessary. He didn't I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it. And there's actually only one on-screen death, and that is Dick Halloran.
Mhm.
So, a lot of people refer to this movie as a slasher film. I never understood why, because I'm like,
Yeah.
there's not really any slashing per
Yeah.
se. But yeah, I think Dick's a great character. I do think a lot of this does come from. I think a lot of the negativity, in my opinion, comes from Stanley Kubrick's writing.
Mhm.
But Stanley Kubrick is just he's. I feel like he doesn't sound like he's the best human in the world, but
No.
but brilliant director. I mean, I think don't hold me to this. I think he only has like 16 film credits to his name, but I'm pretty sure 12 of them are like considered some of the best films of all time.
Mhm.
So, yeah, The Shining was not nominated for any awards at all. Not even Jack Nicholson's performance, not Shelley Duvall's performance. It was actually one of the first major award nominations for a Razzie, which is like the
Serious?
like yes, basically like they're awarded for they were nominated for being bad at what they were doing,
Mm,
which I think is shitty since they obviously put a lot of heart into what they're doing. So,
yeah, it's definitely not a Razzie
right.
material. Like I keep just going back to Jack Nicholson. His performance was so, so good. And I just feel like they could have done so much more with the other characters. And I felt disappointed at Halloran's death. I was like, okay, I don't know.
Well, what do you give the film overall?
Maybe like a 3 or 3.5.
Oh, damn.
3.5,
I think
4.
that's what I guess. Didn't I guess
Yeah,
that?
3.5 or
You're like,
4.
yep, that's it.
Because there are aspects, like I said, I like the whole premise of the movie. Like, I definitely love like a creepy hotel type of a vibe, but I don't know. It just kind of didn't do it for me. Yeah.
Well, I give the movie a 7 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it falls into the writing and maybe the pacing a little bit for me, but I think the film overall just has a very creepy atmosphere to it, and Jack Nicholson's acting is just incredible.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. His acting's just off the charts. Yeah.
well, that's The Shining. Thanks for facing your fears and
Yeah.
checking into the
I
Overlook Hotel.
am really glad that I watched it.
Good. I'm glad
Yeah.
you did. You
Yeah.
survived it.
I did. I survived. Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you, Dave.
So, yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, I appreciate you doing this with me. Whole
Mm-hmm.
another episode down. So,
Yeah.
killed it,
Yeah.
literally. Um, well, I guess I'm gonna head out. I'm gonna go check into the Overlook Hotel and check out room 237. You want to join me? You're like, yeah.
No.
You're like, wait, are we actually? Just kidding. Cool. Well, Lauren, I appreciate you as always. Thanks for doing
Yeah,
The Shining with me,
of course.
and I'm sure I will be talking with you soon.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Dave.
All right. All right. Everyone have a great
Red
day.
rum.
Rad Ram. All right.
Bye.